When I was 7 years old, the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 had already been out for 3 to 4 years and well into their respective life cycles. While everyone was enjoying their quote next-gen gaming, even though it was basically current gen at that point, I was still gaming on my PlayStation 2 and Nintendo Wii. Yeah, the Wii was great and all, but have you ever seen a AAA game on it? This is the fucking future. That PlayStation 2, that baby came out in 2000. I wasn't even born yet when she hit the market. Little to say, the PlayStation 2 was old, but my parents never thought about upgrading because there was quote no need to. They were just content with buying me used PlayStation 2 games, and to be honest, I would still play them for hours on end with a smile on my face. To put an account, I have about 90 to 100 PlayStation 2 games in my collection, half of them being my father's. Also at this time, there was this new underground band hit in the city around 2009 called the Beatles. I quickly became a fan, and they are still my favorite band of all time, and they are the best band of all time. If you disagree with me, just know that I have your IP address, and I will fucking cut you. What does this have to do with Assassin's Creed? Shut the fuck up. So with the Beatles becoming my favorite band and my young dumb brain still rocking the PlayStation 2, those little whispers, little peeps about a little game called the Beatles Rock Band. The thought of playing along to my favorite Beatles tracks were mind-blowing to me. There was a catch though. The Beatles Rock Band was only going to be available on next-gen consoles. Plus the Wii, but we don't have to tell them about that, okay? It'll just be a secret between me and you. So my father made me a deal. If they confirmed the rumors of a Beatles Rock Band, we would get a PlayStation 3. My dad came home with that magazine and I was pumped. Not only will I play the Beatles Rock Band, we will be getting a PlayStation 3. One day my father came home with a box and went straight to our game room and locked the door, which made me a little confused because I wanted to play my copy of Indiana Jones Staff of Kings. After what felt like hours to my young brain, they let me in and I saw it. The PlayStation 3. Slim. I originally thought the Slim was the original model, but the original model looks like it ate all the other models, so I'm kinda glad I got the Slim. We finally got a PlayStation 3, but the Beatles Rock Band wouldn't be released until September 9th of 2009 because inside joke. So what game do we get to hold us over and test out our new console? Assassin's Creed. Although it may not age well today, which we will get to eventually, I remember this game blowing my mind as a kid. One mission that sticks out in my memory is early on when your village gets attacked, you are able to kill an enemy, then seamlessly move on to another enemy. I'm sure it was done before, but as a kid, that smooth transition from killing one guy to the next was super satisfying and fun for me. I also remember introducing the game to my older cousin, and he's been a fan ever since. I didn't get Assassin's Creed 2 when it came out, but I soon met my Uncle Vinny, who said he would buy me Assassin's Creed 2 and eventually 3 when it came out. He got arrested for child pornography. He never ended up buying me Assassin's Creed 3 over legal complications, but before he got arrested, he got me Assassin's Creed 2. I played Assassin's Creed 2 for a bit, but never got far, and as a kid, I never really followed the story. I was just a murderer with a thirst for blood. I also skipped out on Brotherhood and Revelations because as a kid, I thought that if they weren't numbered, that they didn't count. I wasn't the brightest kid. I eventually got Assassin's Creed 3 for Christmas from my mom. I don't really remember much, but I remember being confused why I went from Haytham Kenway to an Indian kid playing hide and seek and then boom, my mother's on fire. I remember liking it though, but not knowing what the fuck was going on. My real mother, who is currently not on fire, came home one day randomly with Black Flag, and I played it once until my friend came over and then I never touched it again. I skipped out on Unity and got Syndicate for Christmas, and I thought it was fun, but it felt weird. It's hard to explain, but it felt like just another entry rather than another Assassin's Creed entry. Like, it wasn't terrible, but it just wasn't the best. It may have been franchise fatigue at this point, but some would say it just lost its spark. Rather than milking the franchise more, they needed to do something new. Rebuild Assassin's Creed from the ground up, a whole new system, maybe even a new progression system, maybe even they made it into an RPG. Yeah. Kind of like God of War PS4, they took a game that felt unique and its own and then slapped an RPG template over it and then boom, new system. Not that RPGs aren't fun or that it didn't work for those games, it certainly did, but it seems to be a theme in modern gaming. RPGify. I skipped out on Origins as I didn't know how I felt about the RPG aspect. I however did dabble in Odyssey, but my reaction was, it was not my cup of tea. Yeah, I never touched it again after that. I did however play Valhalla and I actually kinda liked it. For the first few hours at least. For the first time in a while, I was actually really into playing an Assassin's Creed game. The only problem was that it never fucking ended. Before revisiting, it is currently resting at 40 hours with no end in sight. God please help me, or kill me, I don't really care. So yeah, to say I've been playing since the beginning is sort of an understatement. Not only have I played Assassin's Creed since there was only one game in the series, it was an active part of my childhood. I just wanted to toss my 2 cents in, and with Ubisoft seemingly not knowing its own future with the franchise, it seems that Assassin's Creed may be losing its focus on the assassins in the series called Assassin's Creed. So originally I was going to title this video The Problem with Assassin's Creed, but not only is that a very overused title at this point, I wanted to shift the theme of the video to instead being about the problem with Assassin's Creed and just look back at each entry in the franchise to take a deep dive into the Assassin's Creed game and discuss the quote-unquote problem when it rears its head. I also have to split this video up into 3 separate videos due to the amount of games in the series. The general consensus of the AC series is that Assassin's Creed is not about the assassins anymore. One game doesn't even feature them, but we will get there. After a while, a franchise may go through some changes to keep things fresh, and the Assassin's Creed series is no stranger to that. The problem is if the changes were for the better or for the worst. While seeing how split the fanbase is on these changes may seem to imply that the changes may not be completely for the best. Ubisoft definitely changed the AC formula, but is it better than the original formula? Or did they just use some RPG leftovers they found in the fridge? It's not just gameplay, but narratively as well. The AC games have shifted its focus, and it doesn't seem to have a right track, or a track at all. That's not entirely good. I mean, have you ever tried driving a train with no track? My personal opinion was that the games fell off around Unity. It was the first game to cause a major backlash. Not really for the reasons the future games had, but for other reasons. Every game after Black Flag was shrouded with some problem, whether it was broken, empty, or being called Assassin's Creed with no assassins. There was just something up with the newer games. I guess it also depends on the player. I like RPG games, but I loved the AC system before because it felt unique to Assassin's Creed. It felt similar to other games like the Arkham games, but it still felt unique to its own. The newer games to me just feel like another RPG game, which is fine, but Assassin's Creed used to be much better than just another entry in a genre. It may also depend on the setting of the game, because I personally always loved Assassin's Creed 3 because of the American Revolution setting, but my best friend Bryce loves Odyssey because he likes that time period. Although they may not be the best in the franchise, they stick out to you because it appeals to something you like. Everyone has their own opinions, and every single entry has something for that player. In the end, we're trying to decide if Assassin's Creed really does have a problem. Everyone says there is, but are they just saying that because they watched a YouTube video essay and they formed their opinion over that? Or have they played through all of the games to form their own opinions? I know, it's crazy to have your own opinions, you know? Although my intentions may have been with negative intent with a clickbaity title, I have decided to go in with an open mind and replay every single Assassin's Creed game in the series, hence why it's now called an Assassin's Creed Retrospective. I replayed them all in release order to really experience the series as it was intended and to try to pinpoint when the series began going downhill. I also played on PC with keyboard and mouse because personal preference, but they were all played on PC to give them all an equal chance control-wise. For side content, I decided not to go for 100%. The way I saw it was that if it was optional to beat the game, then it wasn't required. If something is so important but easily skipped over, then how is it that important? There is some side content I did because I felt compelled to and I genuinely wanted to taste more of the game, but I did not 100% any of the games because I respect my sanity. I guess without further ado, let's begin the retrospective with the one that started it all. The original Assassin's Creed came out all the way back on November 13th, 2007, which means it's been nearly a decade and a half since it's been released. I remember when this was the only Assassin's Creed, so the fact that it's been so long since its release makes me feel old, and I'm only 21. I was 8 when I first played this. When I rebought this game on PC for this video, I was almost hesitant because I was worried my fond memories would hold back my true feelings of the game, or that the game was going to be so bad that it will ruin my childhood memories of the game. The game has its rough edges, like rough edges, which was really hard to get through at times. There were also times where I wanted the game to end already, or I was just close to giving up due to the unrelenting shit this game put me through. Of course, there were times where Altair just went through a lot and decided to end it all, or he would just ignore my input completely and cause me to fuck up a chase or even a whole fucking mission. The worst case, I think for me, was when I was sneaking around, like an assassin, and a group of guards literally just spawned right on top of me. Let's just say positive vibes were not happening at that moment. The combat is a very stripped back version of the classic AC combat system we all know, where you had a certain amount of squared health and a system that is reminiscent of the Arkham games, but like less defined. And it also came out before the Arkham series. You had a basic attack, a heavy attack, a block, and a counter which worked like 50% of the time. If it didn't work, you would just wave your sword around like a drunken magician who forgot how to do the trick and the audience suddenly gets violent with you. If the counter does work, you either kill them right away or kind of just push them. Just push them away. As for your weapons, you had Hidden Blade, obviously, I guess like the main weapon in Assassin's Creed, your sword, and the throwing knives that were actually really fun, unless there were any guards around, because then they would have your location tracked down to the T, or there would be walls or innocent bystanders that would just block the knives. There is a training area to practice your combat and the system, but if you're like me, then it would just end in... oh. Hey. He's like, oh fuck. Game's controls are pretty much what you expect and what you remember from an old Assassin's Creed game, but very stripped back. Parkour is very stiff, and sometimes you're going to be trying to climb something and you just can't. Even though there's a ledge you can grab on, but Altair just won't grab it for some particular reason that he just doesn't want to grab it. A lot of my inputs were almost like ignored. Essentially, I would click and the game was just like, nah, you did not click. And even though I was like, I did click, the game was like, nah, you did not click. But I was for sure I clicked, and now Altair has fallen to his death. The game was fun, don't get me wrong. There was much more of the controls that can be improved upon. I guess you could say that the controls were a little stiff, but there was definitely some promise there if acted upon correctly. The missions themselves are just the same type of missions over and over and over and over again. Once you played the 4 or 5 mission types, it was essentially that, but do it like 10 times in a different city. There were assassination missions where you would assassinate someone. It's pretty straightforward for an assassin game. Eavesdropping missions where you have to listen to some gossip. Pickpocket missions where you pickpocket. I mean, what the fuck else do you want it to be? Racing missions where you have to dart across town to someone who will tell you a thing. Then there are interrogations where you beat the living shit out of someone for information. Each type of mission gives you some piece of info that could actually help you and give you an insight on how to approach the main assassination. I, however, usually alert the guards and run across town to lose them. I'm the definition of an assassin. Anyways, rinse, wash, repeat, you get the picture. That's Assassin's Creed. There would be about 6 of those missions to do, but you only had to do 3 to move on. The optional completion will just give you more intel on the mission, so you can choose which tactic. Sometimes it will unlock a group of people that you can sneak in with, but I typically had my foolproof plan of kill, turn tail, and run. There were also optional save the citizen missions that would unlock scholars to blend into places or vigilantes to help fight and distract guards for you. But after like the first 2 memory blocks, you learn to just ignore their cries for help, because at the end of the day, who commits a crime in front of law enforcement? Personally, I don't think death is necessary for apple theft, but if I decided to help, the entire military kind of just comes after me, so I just ended up ignoring them. So I ended up just leaving them to the land's judicial system. After a bit though, missions got very repetitive. Go to the bureau, do 3 missions, return to the bureau, kill target, back to bureau, 9 times in a fucking row. It eventually mixed it up towards the end to wrap up the story, but by then you're almost burnt out after doing your assassination routine over and over. It was fun at first, and maybe taking extended breaks between could help, but playing the game straight through was pretty tiring at times. The story itself is basically what keeps you invested or too bored to beat the game. Basically, your master Rashid, or more commonly referred to as Al-Mulim, please forgive me if I'm mispronouncing the names, it's been a very long time since I beat this game, orders you to receive a piece of Eden. You fuck up. After getting tattled on, you are demoted and stripped of everything, and have to be re-promoted by completing 9 assassinations throughout the game ordered by Rashid. These targets all seem to be connected by their connections to the Templars, or how Altair calls them, Templars.
Hold Templars!
After killing the last target, it is revealed that Rashid is a Templar and wanted the piece of Eden for himself. So you kill him at the end. Desmond's story is the key to all of this, basically giving a reasoning for all of this and tying all the pieces together. In the modern day storyline, the war between the Assassins and the Templars are still ongoing, with the Templars disguised as Abstergo. Dr. Warren Vidic, who works for said Abstergo, kidnaps Desmond and straps him into the animus that lets Desmond live through his ancestors' lives. Vidic and Lucy, played by Anna from Frozen, uses Desmond to go through Altair's life and try to find the piece of Eden that holds the map to a bunch of temples or something. Then in the end, due to an attack on the facility, Lucy and Warren leave Desmond alone, and that's where he finds out that he can actually use the eagle vision that Altair was using earlier, creating the bleeding effect that will continue on in the next game. It also reveals a hidden message on the wall written in blood from the previous prisoner. It's not the most exciting gameplay in the world, but it does give a lot of weight to the plot. I just wish that there was more things to do rather than just expository dumping. As a matter of fact, gameplay wise, this was really fucking boring because all you do is walk in between 2 rooms and have these characters talk about the plot to you. Quite literally a walking simulator. I remember Desmond getting a lot of hate, but never really hated him. Didn't say I loved him either, but after playing this game, I really appreciated the modern day stuff because this game definitely sets up the future games and a blueprint for the series to go on. A direction to go and explore. Newer games have tried to do the same thing, but we'll get to them later. In this game, we play as Altair, played by Philip Shabazz, and the one who started it all. He may not be the best assassin in the series, but he is far from the worst. Bland might be a word to describe him though. I doubt anyone would really call him their favorite assassin other than being the OG, but I wouldn't question them if they did. There really wasn't much to his character, other than being an asshole. He's an asshole to his brother, his masters, and his targets. Until he's not. I get we're supposed to see him at his lowest and see him grow, but like Jesus, I did not like him for a good bit of the game. Like, how am I supposed to be on his side? It's okay though, I found some distractions in the game to get me by. He eventually sees the error in his ways by finally apologizing to the guy he fucked over in the beginning of the game that I didn't even realize was the same character until the very end. He does have an arc in the game though, and in the end, he stays true to the assassins and takes down Rashid. If Altair is your favorite, cool, I can see why. But I wouldn't want to see him lead another game unless he was worked on. Maybe a cameo, I think that would be really sick. Also, it was very distracting that he, the main character, is the only person in the time period and setting without an accent. He is 100% American and it is very distracting. The performance itself was fine, I'm sure Philip didn't have much to go off of, but he did the best with what he was given. Desmond, on the other hand, is much like the player in which he has no idea what's going on. You, the player, and Desmond are thrown into the animus without explanation until they pull you out and tell you what's happening. They don't tell you too much at once and leave you wanting more, and I thought Desmond really did capture that pretty well. Also played by the guy who's in like every single video game, Nolan North. Desmond apparently has run away from his assassin life, but soon realizes Abstergo's true self and the dangers ahead. He doesn't really get to do much in this game, but hopefully in the next one, we get to dive more into his character other than just the "what's this" guy. The setting in this game is set in the Holy Land in 111 BC? AC? I don't fucking remember. Which if you love or appreciate that setting or period, good for you. I, however, didn't have much connection to the setting, but I definitely wouldn't say I hated it. It was an excellent starter point for Assassin's Creed with a fantastic scenery and wide range of structures to jump off of. All the cities do feel different in some kind of way, but in the end, it felt very much the same with just a different color overlay. I probably wouldn't be able to tell you the difference between the different cities in game, but it still felt and looked really good. The game actually looks very good. Maybe a little dated at some points, but it still looked really beautiful. I would say the graphics still probably hold up for the most part. In the end, the very first Assassin's Creed was a fantastic launch point and great to revisit after all these years, especially seeing where the franchise has gone since then. It was certainly not perfect with a lot of problems, but it is a first in a franchise. People loved it then, and I'm sure people would still love it today if they were to revisit it. Don't go in expecting it to be the best or perfect AC game, but I certainly hope to see what didn't work improve and what did work elevate in the next game. I would probably give this game probably a solid 7 out of 10. If only there was a sequel. Assassin's Creed Dos. Mwah, mwah, mamma mia, mo assassino. You can definitely tell that they took what worked from the first game and improved it, and left what didn't work behind. Better missions, combat, and overall story, this game is almost better in every single way than the first one. After playing the first game, I've learned to appreciate this one a lot more. Graphics and controls feel a little bit aged, but not as bad as Assassin's Creed 1 in comparison. The controls, I would say, have been improved massively. Even though there was still the occasional accidental suicide, it felt more refined and smoothed out since the last game. Counters actually countered, blocks actually blocked. There were still times the games that I didn't counter, but not as much as the first game. I will say it is a lot harder to kill innocent civilians in this game since the last one. The last one you can just go up and kill someone. This one you have to get creative, which I'm not too fond of, but hey, I guess, you know, Ezio didn't kill innocent civilians, but I do. It just overall feels the same, but just improved so well. There's still room for improvement, but it's still really good for its time. This game, however, is tailored for controllers, and it's very obvious. I think the PC port is literally just a straight port of the 360 version, because when you have to witness the Ezio's birth, which, first off, what the fuck? You have to press all these buttons to move your hands or move your legs, and it'll be like, press the red key, or press the yellow key. Why is this so damn difficult? As far as the combat, I mean, it's pretty much the same, but massively improved. There are new weapons, like later on, Leonardo DiCaprio builds you a fucking gun, but there's the same counter, block, all that stuff, it's all there. It just feels a lot better in this game, but obviously could be built upon. Missions is where I felt the most improvements in this game. These missions actually fleshed out the story rather than feel like chores to do before the main assassination. Instead of running across town just for them to be like, Altair, be careful, there's gonna be guards. So, yeah, good luck with that. The missions actually had plot relevancy. Towards the end, there were some unbearable missions that didn't add to the story at all. There was one where you had to kill like 9 guys back to back. Another was when some guys stole the piece of Eden and this girl's kids, so you end up having to go in and out and getting the piece of Eden back and the kids all in one sequence, so it kind of just felt like filler. So apparently those sequences were actually DLC that the PC port forces into the plot, rather than being optional to buy on console. So it kind of makes sense, but it's still fucking stupid. There were a lot of trailing missions in this game, which was also fucking stupid. Like, it'll literally make you walk a 5K, like, where's my Disney medal? The missions actually felt like missions for the story, but the missions from the last game do make a comeback, but as side missions, which is kind of funny that the missions in the first game are kind of just viewed as side missions. I don't know, it's funny for me. So the plot evolves around a sexy Italian man as he lives a normal life, until his family is publicly hung. Secrecy around the execution are soon revealed to be surrounded by the still raging assassin and Templar war. Turns out the Templars framed your family and you go on a revenge-fueled rampage to kill everyone involved in the death of your father and 2 brothers. Also, your mom's mute now, which I don't know if that's just because there was like a glitch in the code that froze the character model, so they just wrote in the fact that she's mute, but I don't fucking know. Hey, it's editor me. I'm the one editing the video. You see? It's me. So apparently, if you collected all the feathers in the game, which there's like approximately like 9 billion, your mother starts talking again. I guess she is cured of the depression because now you have a drawer full of feathers. But fuck the feathers and fuck Petruccio. Ezio's first kill felt personal.
Pezzo di merda! Vorrei solo che avessi sofferto di più! Hai avuto la fine che meritavi! Spero che Enough, Ezio! Show some respect. Respect.
With the help of your uncle, who is named after the famous video game character, Jake Conway from Right to Hell Retribution, you kill more and more Templars involved with the death of your family. You also meet friends along the way that are revealed to be assassins. Assassino reunion. Eventually, Emperor Palpatine becomes the Pope to presumably touch kids. I don't know, what else do Catholics do? And to do some prophecy stuff. Your last target ends up being Emperor Pope in the chapel, and you 2 fist fight for the Piece of Eden. Then some weird holographic lady pops up to tell you, there will be more games in the franchise. Desmond Miles. Hey, who the hell is Desmond? Shut the fuck up! As for Desmond in the modern day storyline, Lucy breaks him out of Abstergo as it's revealed that she is secretly an assassin. You meet up with Sean and Rebecca and their homemade animus as you try to find the Piece of Eden before Abstergo does. Desmond also starts getting abilities from his ancestors via Altair and Ezio by a thing called the Bleeding Effect, which essentially trains Desmond to gain their abilities through living their lives. Basically just like another reason to go back on the animus and keep playing as Ezio. The plot definitely picks up in this game as it really finds its footing. I feel like Ubisoft realized they had a hit on their hands, so they knew Assassin's Creed 3 was coming, so they just went full forward with the modern day story, and in return, the Animus story. I felt like the modern day stuff was more connected to Ezio's rather than, hey, Desmond, I am Vidic, here's some information about the Templars and Assassins. Okay, now get back in the Animus. It can still feel that way sometimes, but not as much as the last game. By the end of Assassin's Creed 2, I was really looking forward to see the story unfold for Desmond and the Assassins. Also, I don't know why I forgot this in the script, but Leonardo da Vinci is the best part of this game, and I love him so much. Ezio's arc, I thought, was handled way better than Altair's. They both shared the asshole turned assassin role model, but Ezio's was done way more realistically. Either way, they were both better than Anakin's turn to the dark side. It is pretty much a basic revenge story, easy to screw up, but also very easy to get right. And they got it right. Ezio was handled phenomenally well, and Roger Craig Smith was pretty much a perfect casting choice. Going from a blind rage murder to holding back killing the man behind it all. Am I basic for having Ezio be my favorite assassin? No. It's either his character being very well written, or just me being Italian, but Ezio has been and will always be my favorite assassin, and I will never get over playing this game. Also, in the game, comes like a live action like movie about Ezio's dad, and in that live action short film, Roderick from the Diary of a Wimpy Kid movies plays Ezio, which is the weirdest casting, and I don't remember if he gets a line or like any like substantial dialogue, so I can't really judge it. But yeah, Roderick plays Ezio. Just thought that was interesting. Desmond gets more to do with the whole bleeding effect, but they are definitely building up to his character becoming a full assassin one day. It would be very cool to see Desmond actually go on missions, but for now, he's just training. Of course, he is still just a vessel for the story to flow through, but he still has the potential, and I'm excited to see him grow in the next few games. Again, there's not much to do with Desmond in this game rather than just walk around and receive information, but I really hope that we get to do more with him in the next few games. The setting is probably the most beautiful and iconic of the whole series. Italy. Or should I say, Mamma mia, the fucking... This is probably the best setting in the entire franchise, and probably the first thing you think of when someone mentions Assassin's Creed. I do feel like each city does feel more unique than the last game. There were also some side missions to upgrade your villa, which I actually contributed in. I didn't 100% it, but I dumped a lot of funds into it. It does give you something to do other than the story, but visually, there's not much the upgrades do. Just some small tweaks like adding certain civilians and shops on the street. Not that the first game setting was bad, I just felt like this game really stepped it up a bit. Overall, I feel like this game was a massive improvement from the last one, and so close to being perfect. Just held back by like the smallest things. There is a reason this is a fan favorite after over a decade. This game pretty much improved everything from the original and then some. There are some problems in this game that can be fixed upon in the sequel, but overall, I think I'll give this game an 8 out of 10. I would give it a 9 out of 10 if the DLC wasn't forced upon you and dragging that whole section down, but since I'm playing on PC and it was forced into the story at the worst possible time, I'm gonna have to bring it down a grade. This game, to me, is both an upgrade, but also like, not a downgrade, but like, still water. Let me explain. I really like this game, probably just as much as Assassin's Creed 2, but there's a lot of problems that holds it back from being the best. Let's talk about the positives first. Huge glow up from the previous game. The gameplay also feels great even with some rough edges, and both Ezio's and Desmond's story shines in their own right. So the game is good. What's wrong with it? The game is a buggy mess. I mean, it's Ubisoft, what the fuck did I expect? I had many parts in the game where Ezio just fights my inputs and just does his own thing. I just had a very buggy time, and many times, they were in the way of my enjoyment. Jesus has answered our prayers, and Ubisoft realized that they also released the games on PC. No more push the red button. Now it's press the W key. Oh, come on! I still think early AC games were tailored more to controller than keyboard and mouse, and it still kind of stands here, but it does feel a lot better here. In each game, they seem to build on the controls and parkour, and although it just feels like a tiny upgrade from Assassin's Creed 2, it still feels the exact same, but smoother. Nothing too major. If the damn game worked. I experienced so many bugs in this game that actively took me out. Ezio seems to have a mind of his own and fight me on all of the inputs I give him. When the game worked, it felt amazing, maybe even perfect. When it didn't, it felt like I was having a stroke. Basically, it was hit or miss. It was either nutworthy or ball busting. The combat is so much smoother. At a weird cost though. It feels so good to effortlessly murder guards, which does make a lot of sense chronologically because Ezio's already been trained from the last game. There's also a new feature where after you successfully counter an enemy, which is even easier to do in this game, if you select another enemy while still in that killing animation, you can insta-kill that enemy, even the armored ones that aren't usually easy to kill. The main problem is that it removes a lot of the challenge in the game. The insta-kill just changes the game altogether. It doesn't matter if there's 50 armored guards, as long as there's one regular guard, you can just wait or taunt him to attack you and perform a successful counter, and then suddenly, you're the last one standing in the blink of an eye. I get this is the same Ezio from the previous entry, so he would probably have the same skill set from the endgame and more some. Although I like slicing through guards like Anakin with the younglings, I can understand why some would not like the easier combat. Also, they now have indicators to show when they're about to strike, like another game that came out around Assassin's Creed 2. There are some weird things that I don't know if they were mistakes or cut corners, but were very distracting. If someone attacks and you counter while still being in a previous counter animation, the animation would cancel and counter the new enemy while still killing the previous enemy. It's kind of distracting, but hey, it does make the combat a lot more smooth. The taunt is also shortened, so instead of Ezio reciting a whole fucking Shakespeare monologue, he kind of just says, "Fuck you," and that usually gets them all riled up. It does get rid of the risk of a taunt. They would always attack mid-taunt last game, so I understand the change of a pretty much useless mechanic. The combat is evolving though, and the formula is beginning to shape. This is very much the AC combat, not a reskin of Arkham like other games blatantly do. this does feel somewhat unique in its own way. It's like Spider-Man for PlayStation. It feels like it borrows from other games, but it feels unique to that game. Honestly, combat is at its peak right now. I feel like it holds its ground very well. The setting is a weird conversation. Instead of having 5 different areas / maps with somewhat unique settings, Brotherhood only has one giant map. It doesn't sound new now, but back then, it was. I feel like it was a test to push the technical ability of an Assassin's Creed game. At first, I felt like it was a downgrade with having just one map for the entire game, but I soon realized that it was the first step to one big open world. There were some spots on the map where I could climb and parkour for hours, but there were also just so much empty space between areas. Just open and flat land. There was a part where I had to help characters from the previous game, but they ranged all around the map, and I found myself riding in emptiness more times than none. It did get pretty annoying after a while, but once you hit civilization, it felt very lively. It was a big step in the right direction, and was the first in the franchise. But there was so much to be built and worked upon. Missions were, missions. It felt very less focused than the previous game, focusing more about your brotherhood. So a lot of this feels like filler and kind of just DLC to Assassin's Creed 2. I feel like that might be a little controversial, so here's a picture of a cat. Yeah, I bet you feel better now. The missions themselves are a lot of what we've seen before and not really that new to the series. I do feel like the bigger and mostly empty map made from going to mission so boring. I'm looking at empty fields with nothing to do until I finally reach the other end of the fucking map to do a filler mission. It just feels like it's padding out the runtime more than anything. Like, what does saving this guy's wife from the French have anything to do with the Apple of Eden? Nothing. The answer is nothing. I know, we're building our bonds with the Brotherhood so they can help us in the end to get the apple, but I'm so fucking bored. I would say the missions themselves are fine. They are fun, which is the most important thing. I just wish they had more narrative weight, and that's what I was more hyped about this game. The story itself takes a back seat to focus more on the Brotherhood. I would say it's 50-50. Half is the story continued from the last game and where the game shines. The other half is building relationships like saving his stupid wife and the stupid French. Can you guess which mission I hated the most? Basically, the story of this game is you let the Pope live from the last game, and no one liked that. So you go back to your villa you spent the entire last game building. So you go to Roma after Cesare Borgia, the Pope's son, attacks your villa and kills Uncle Wario, stealing the Apple of Eden in the process. You do a lot of the stuff from the previous games, killing Templars to cripple their power. Once Cesare feels his hold dwindling, he goes to his father to ask for a small loan of $1 million, a battalion, and the apple itself. Daddy Pope says no, and tries to poison his son. Plot twist! But Cesare spits it out and forces the poison down his father's throat, killing him. Plot twist! He then unleashes his anger on his lover/sister, long story, which causes her to break up with her brother and reveals the location of the apple so you can get it before Cesare. Yo, it's some weird Shakespeare shit, just try to follow. You get the apple and become God. You destroy Cesare's backing army and he fucks off. You then use the apple to find Cesare attacking a place for sport, or just bored I guess, I don't fucking know. And you confront him. He says he cannot die from the hands of a mortal man. So he falls. Ezio then hides the apple under the Colosseum. There's also side missions disguised as main quests where you help out your Brotherhood pals to make the title make more sense or something, I don't fucking know. It is not as compelling as this father versus son, step-bro Pornhub shit. The main story is so compelling and adds to the previous game, but it sucks when it's split up by such pace killers. There would have been amazing side stories that could have been optional and not forced onto you. They all have interesting premises, a traitor in the order, a friend's wife kidnapped by the French, all things that would have been fun if I went out of my way to do them, not force me to complete them to get back to the main plot. The gameplay improved, but the storytelling was held back. It felt like they had an amazing story, but it was way too short to make it a full game, so they added a bunch of filler missions. They also made the actual side quests in the game so short. You'd blink and it was over, which sucks because I wanted to know what happened to Christina, but it felt so tacked on. I feel like this game and its story would have been so much better as DLC. The ending also felt so fumbled and scrapped together. The ending was basically over the span of several years, I think, but kept having you do like a short section, time jump, short section, time jump. Like major whiplash. It felt really rushed. I guess when the story shines, it really shines. But there's just so much that puts a damper on everything. Desmond's story feels a lot more focused on this time around. I feel like the last game only focused on the modern day storyline at the beginning and end, but this we actually got to control Desmond as a full character rather than follow Lucy. Okay, back in the animals. It feels like an actual continuation from the last game, but still needs some expanding on. Like the story in the modern day is basically Villa is a new HQ. Okay, we found Apple, let's go. But when we eventually do get to the Coliseum, we actually get some parkour with Desmond, which actually feels really cool, and I hope we get more Desmond missions in the future. When you eventually find the apple through Ezio's memory, we kill Lucy. Again, another cliffhanger that makes me excited for the next game for both characters. It really does feel like both stories coincide and complement each other. Like Ezio's storyline directly links to Desmond and feels needed. It feels equally as important. I really hope we get answers to this cliffhanger in the next game. The main protagonist is the same this time around. Ezio, sexiest Italian man ever, Auditore. He feels the same, but a little grown up. You can tell the last game changed him, and he continues to grow in this game. We get to watch this naive man twist and turn into a masterful assassin. Not overnight, but over the span of a whole adventure. It does feel like his connections to the pieces of Eden is finished though, with all loose ends being tied up, so I'm kind of interested to see how they continue Ezio's story in the next game, and how it ties to the rest of the series. Desmond's story still leaves more to be explored as his adventures span farther from just Ezio in Italy. It's the catalyst of the series so far, but Ezio's story seems finished, so I'm intrigued but also a little worried. I guess I should start talking about the side characters as this game focuses on them so much. They're fine. One guy is pretty much a dick so much people think he's a traitor and try to kill him, and then he becomes friendly all of a sudden. And everyone else is the same as before, except our uncle. He's dead. Claudia also seems to have a rivalry with Ezio out of nowhere, but they soon put their differences aside once she murders a group of guards, and they grant her a promotion to assassin. Leonardo also makes a return, but his role in the game is very limited. But I loved every second he was on screen. Truly my favorite side character. The characters all around were pretty good, but Ezio had the most growth. I do hope we see Claudia get more assassin action in the next game though. Overall, Brotherhood was a promising mess that could have been a lot better if they focused on the right things. Gameplay-wise, I would probably say it's peak Assassin's Creed, which is probably why it's a favorite amongst most. It really does feel like Ubisoft got the core AC formula down and can really hone down on it. It's the most fun Assassin's Creed game so far, and I'm really excited to see how Revelations expands on it. I'm actually really hyped to play Revelations, an 11-year-old game, and all I can think about is jumping into it. If the story was more focused, then I would say this was my favorite, but unfortunately, anytime I felt engaged in the story, the game makes me save a guy's wife in the French. I hate that mission so fucking much. It felt much like The Last Jedi for me, which I liked, and I don't care what you think of it, it's still one of the most beautifully made Star Wars movies. If you disagree with me, I'll fuck your mother, and I'll fuck your father, and I'll fuck your dog, and I am super engaged with the A plot, but I have to sit through the B plot. We were this close to greatness, but alas, we are held back by some smaller issues that some could easily overlook, which if you did, I'm truly happy for you. I'm glad you were able to enjoy this game more than me. I also just had a pretty buggy experience. Another Ubisoft staple, but nothing game breaking. I would still say I loved playing through this game. 8 out of 10. I am super excited for the next chapter. Speaking of. So, new favorite Assassin's Creed game? For the longest time, my favorite has always been Assassin's Creed 3 because of the American Revolution setting, which we'll get to in a minute. But for the time being, I fucking love this game. It felt really good to play, but it was over before I knew it. I did beat this game in only 9 hours compared to the 13 it took me for Brotherhood, so it was clearly a shorter experience, and that's probably due to a lack of proper side content. I'm not complaining, I love linear games as well, and this game was heavily focused on the story, which was my main gripe with the previous entry. But you could have thrown in something rather than last minute feather-like collectibles with the anima shards or this weird balloon tower defense mode. What I was excited about this the most was the direction it was going to take, since the Ezio story felt wrapped up in the last one, and they answered that by giving us a whole different ass story, which I'll get to in a second. I will say before deep diving is that this game feels like an upgrade rather than like a neutral feeling I had with Brotherhood from Assassin's Creed 2. But let's dive into what I loved about this game so much. As per usual, the controls in combat are mostly the same as the previous entries with slight tweaks. The only true difference is the hook blade and the traversal that comes with it. There are ziplines everywhere and you can be an asshole and trip people, which is what I mainly used it for. It's really meant for enemies, but if it really was, why is it more fun to ruin a civilian's morning when they're just trying to get home to their family? It also acts as a second hidden blade and can be used to skill buildings faster. The combat, much like the gameplay and the controls, feel the same. There is one big difference though, and that's the final kill is in slow motion now, and enemies have one long health bar rather than several squares. There's also a more obvious attack indicator. Wait a minute. All jokes aside, although it borrows from another game's very popular style, it still feels like the AC combat from before, just tweaked a little bit in order to make it more easier. A lot easier. Too easy at times. Just the same complaint from the last game with some instant kills that really takes out the risk factor in this game. There's also a parachute. Don't worry if you forget, the game forgets too. It really only makes you use it in the beginning and end. It really is pretty useless. It really felt like the older combat from the previous game, but built upon, which is always nice. That's what you want in a game. I really like the mission structure here, except for the Sophia memories at a certain degree. They are main missions that don't really feel like one, to be honest. Remember the optional temples from the last two games? Well, they're required now, forced upon you like the Assassin's Creed 2 DLC on a PC port. I didn't mind too much as I really enjoy those parts of the game, but if you skipped all those temples for a reason, well, I hate to break it to you. Unlike Brotherhood, all the missions actually felt like they pushed the story along, a story I was also very compelled in. Although short, it didn't feel as much as a drag as each mission actually pushed the plot along instead of saving this guy's wife from the French. The tutorial didn't overstay its welcome, each mission feeds into the plot, it just felt like a breeze. Like I said, there is a lack of side content. There are anima shards that unlock portals in the Animus world, but I didn't really fuck with those because they just felt like a replacement for the feathers, and fuck Ezio's stupid brother. Petruchio got what he deserved. They have dug up the grave of Petruchio Auditore to hang him again for guilt-tripping Ezio to collecting 110 feathers. Fucking bitch. The recruitment of assassins by saving civilians is back from the first game, and there is a balloon tower defense mode. I have no idea. I did not touch that part of the game unless the game forced me to, which thankfully isn't a lot. So there is some side content if you do wish to complete it. In Brotherhood, some side content were even promoted to the main quest. Yes, I'm looking at you, saving wife from the French mission. Why the fuck did you have me do that? You have a fucking soul. The story was something I was really excited to get into. I had so many questions to be answered in this entry. What would this add to Ezio's journey? What would it mean for the modern day section? Would they be able to wrap up Ezio's journey in a satisfying way? And I am happy to say that none of those questions were really answered. It definitely added to Ezio's story, just not the story told in the previous two games. It felt like a standalone story compared to Brotherhood, which built upon its predecessor. And I was okay about it. I definitely loved the story, but would have loved an expansion to Brotherhood, but to be honest, there was no room for expansion. So the only thing to do is to go off on a completely different path, I guess. It's like if Empire Strikes Back ended with the rebels winning and everyone's arcs being fulfilled, then in Return of the Jedi, Luke goes off on a separate adventure to fight the First Order or something, with no other returning character from the previous movie. It's kinda weird. The story is basically Ezio leaving Italy to go to the old assassin HQ from the first game, which is now crawling with Templars, ironically. Ezio's looking for Altair's library for knowledge, but it's locked with the Templars having the 5 keys. So you go to Constantinople to other assassins to mentor them because you're like 50 now. I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name, it's been a while since I played it, but Yusuf is there to meet you and you essentially become his mentor throughout the game. There was also a guy on a boat you arrived on who turns out to be the nephew of the Sultan, which there's some family drama since the uncle was named Sultan, but everyone wanted the dad to be Sultan. There was a plot that the Byzantine Templars are planning to overthrow the Ottomans, so you kill the main guard who turns out was trying to stop the Templars, so you kill the main Templar. Or did you? Plot twist! The uncle was the Templar all this time and was plotting to kidnap his nephew to then save him and make it look like he's a hero in Sultan material. That was a mouthful. He then kidnaps your love interest Sophia, who has helped you find all the keys to this point, and only says he'll free her if you give him all the keys. You comply and free Sophia, but proceed to steal back all the keys in a weird parachute action sequence. After you catch him, the father enters and reveals he is now Sultan and kills his brother. You take the keys back to Altair's library and see Altair's dead skeleton, where you find the second Apple of Eden. Why is there two? Ezio then speaks directly to Desmond, as he figured that he probably can hear him and sees an image of him. As he drops his weapon and armor, knowing that the story is far greater than he'll ever be, he finally retires. And that's the last we see of Ezio. Ezio just then dips from the story. There's no like final cutscene or where he goes back to Italy to his family or anything. He just leaves. If you want to see a proper ending to Ezio, there is Embers, which is available on YouTube. It's like a short animated movie that I think also ties into Chronicles. I just thought since this is the last game of Ezio, we should get at least something, but what we got was good enough. The story was ultimately really engaging, but overall unneeded in the grand scheme of things. My only real gripe is that it feels weightless in the overall trilogy, but it was so fun regardless. Altair actually has a major role in this game, despite the lack of playtime. Every time you collect a key, you get an Altair flashback, which are honestly the best part of the entire game. I guess I should mention the elephant in the room. Altair actually has an accent in this game, and it's really distracting. Not in the sense that it was bad, it just feels like a completely different person. Probably because there was a different voice actor, now being voiced by Cass Anvar. He does a very good job with the part he's given, that being an older and basically dying Altair. Although the first memory is set before the ending of the first game, the rest takes place after and expands the story without having an unneeded game. See, it's not that hard. Basically, after Altair gets the apple, one assassin named Abbas doesn't trust Altair with the apple and tries to steal it. After Altair gets it back, Abbas turns the assassins against Altair and he runs away with his wife Maria. He eventually comes back to try to talk to Abbas, but he kills Maria and then Altair runs away again. He eventually comes back as an older man, and some assassins begin to agree that Altair did nothing wrong and storm the HQ. Altair finds Abbas and states that the apple has showed him the future. So he shoots him with a gun. After all of that, Altair decides to lock himself in the library with the Apple of Eden and gives off the keys to a friend where he waits for his death. Altair's death feels very impactful in this game, and earned in my opinion, and it just felt very touching for the OG assassin of the series. It was honestly something I didn't think was needed, but was very welcoming towards. I kinda wish this game was half Ezio focused and half Altair focused to flesh this game out more. The endings do intertwine with each other and felt like a really nice addition. The modern day section was something I was also really excited for, and we get absolutely nothing. Yeah, Desmond is trapped in an Animus landscape thing for this entire game, and we get no progress in that storyline. Except for the reveal of Subject 16. And yeah, I hate him. He has some side mission stuff in Brotherhood that I didn't do, but he felt more interesting there than here. Because in here, he's annoying. I felt like the build-up in the last game should have had a bigger conclusion in this game, but he's kind of just thrown in here and it feels very lackluster. It makes me happy I didn't waste my time with the side stuff in the last game, because I feel like I'd be more angry than annoyed here. Basically, we're trapped here until like a Nexus event or something. Basically, Desmond needs to live through more of Ezio and subsequently Altair's memory until there's no more. AKA, Ubisoft wanted to do another Ezio game, but they didn't know what to do with Desmond, so they pressed pause at the possibly worst time in Desmond's plot, as it was literally a cliffhanger in the last game. We do learn more about the three god people and the end of the world. Also, Dad's here. Say hi, Dad.
Hi, Dad.
Also, didn't really explain the Lucy situation. You can hear them talking about how she's dead, but we get no explanation about why Juno made us kill her. I just hope Assassin's Creed 3 really steps it up with a modern day storyline. Ezio's still as cunning as ever, but with a newfound wisdom. He's essentially Obi-Wan in this rather than Luke. Can you tell I watch Star Wars? And he can still pull the ladies in his 50s. God damn! It felt really cool to see Ezio all grown up and basically a completely different character from the first two outings. It feels like his character actually grew and learned from the previous adventures. There were moments where it harkened back to his youth. I just only wished we got an ending for Ezio in this game like we did with Altair. I will say, the game made me love Altair a lot more, especially after playing the first game. I just wish there was more Altair in this game, because I felt his stuff was way too short. And going back to Ezio's ending, I guess him taking off his armor and him realizing the story is more than just him, and he's just a small piece to this large puzzle, is a very fitting end to his assassin's career. It did feel like an ending in some sense. However, I will miss this Italian man, and after spending a whole trilogy with him, it is time to finally move on to the next. Hi, it's editor me again. You see that? That's me. So my dumbass forgot to write and record, well, mainly because I forgot to write it, and talk about the setting. So here I am, 2 years later, gonna try to dig up something about the setting. It was pretty cool. I like the setting. It was 2 different maps split up by a lake, aka a loading screen, the loading screen lake. And then there was one section where you're like underground something. That was pretty cool. The setting's really cool, very unique. Doesn't feel like Brotherhood or 2 or 1. Its own thing. It's really cool. That's all I can really remember. It's a good setting though. Yay. Although it wasn't the conclusion we deserved or even needed, Revelations was a solid entry when all odds were stacked against it. It doesn't really feel like a needed stepping stone in the grand scheme of things. It felt like an excuse for just one more Ezio journey. It was still one hell of a game though. It does give us more Altair, which I loved, and gave us a new Ezio in a way, with a new mentor type character rather than him being the one mentored. I will miss the smooth Italian assassin so much, and he's still one of my favorite assassins of all time. Probably because we had 3 games with him, so it's kind of unfair, but it is what it is. I will definitely feel his absence as we move forward, but as Ezio realized in that library, the series is so much more than just him. This isn't just Ezio's journey, and it's time to move on. I was very nervous delving into this game for a few reasons. First off, I have been playing as Ezio for 3 whole games, and now I'm jumping into a whole new character. Second, I have been used to Ezio's playstyle, and I don't know how much would actually change between the new shift. And lastly, Assassin's Creed 3 has been my favorite since I was a kid, and I was worried it won't be as good as I remembered. And well, yeah, no, it's still my favorite. Although it's definitely not the best AC game, let me start off with that, I still love it dearly, from its gameplay to its setting and story. Again, opinions can be different. You may like Assassin's Creed 2 better, or be weird and think Odyssey is a good game, but in my opinion, Assassin's Creed 3 is my personal favorite so far in my retrospective on the series. I will say beforehand that I played the remaster because I have the original version, but that requires me to open up Uplay, and why would I do that to myself? And it's also the only version you can currently buy on Steam, and it's supposed to be like the original game, bugs and all, with just prettier graphics. Now whether or not it needed a remaster is entirely up to you, but I think it looks fine. It still feels older, but with a fresh coat of paint, so nothing too flashy. This game definitely feels like a slow burn though, but once it turns up, it turns the fuck up. The story was great and touched on aspects not touched on before. It had a very interesting dynamic, and it was just fun. Unlike Brotherhood and Revelations, Assassin's Creed 3 didn't have a template to fall back on, which I know sounds weird coming from the 5th entry in the series, and it does have a backbone to build off of. Assassin's Creed 3 feels unique in a way. It's not completely different, it still feels like that Assassin's Creed formula we played before, but very much tweaked in this one. As if they took the chance with it being a whole new chapter in the series to do some major touch-ups on the gameplay. For one, the UI is completely different and it took a bit to get used to, but I eventually found myself navigating through it fine enough. This game feels a lot more simple, which I'm not the biggest fan of, and unsure why they keep making every new entry easier and easier. They removed the sprint feature that initiated the climb and being able to jump to get higher ledges when you're climbing, but now it's just hold shift. There's only one speed for running, and it also initiates climb. I like the more complex climbing rather than the hold button. You can now climb trees, which is cool if it works. Not too confusing, but can be weird at times, mainly in the woods where there's a lot of trees. I only had one really big problem when I had to climb a tree for a viewpoint, but I couldn't get to the top. Then I found out the top wasn't actually the top, it was just stupid. There's also a very unique feature where Connor can climb trees, but Haytham cannot. Probably because Connor grew up around trees and Haytham probably fell off a tree once and broke his arm and has a vendetta against trees ever since. It's a very cool attention to detail. There's also a feature in the older games where if you fell, you could catch yourself on a ledge and not take fall damage. There's a few times I got it to work in this game, but for the life of me, I don't know how. They made something more complicated when trying to make the game simpler. Unfortunately, the controls were the only thing affected by the layout change. The combat also went through some notable changes. Instead of countering right before they hit you, you can counter by pressing E, where you can kill them, unarm them, or throw them. The combat feels different, but you get used to it fast. Sometimes countering doesn't seem to register, which seems to be a very common thing in Assassin's Creed games apparently. I will say this though, the combat is bad fucking ass. Connor is simply a brute and will maliciously murder anyone that opposes him. I feel like I use his tomahawks the most in this game due to its brutality. Kill streaks make a return in this game, but a lot more ferocious. The combat also feels slower and clunky in a good way. Connor doesn't have the same elegancy like his father, Ezio, or Altair did. His hits feel like a vicious punctuation. I never tried a sword with Connor, so I don't know if he carries the same skill or just shoves it up your ass or something. Speaking of different weapons, the weapon wheel is fucked. I would press F to pay respects, but also to open the weapon wheel, or the double wheel, the weapon wheel within the weapon wheel. And sometimes, it just wouldn't open for the first few tries. When it did eventually open, WASD would control the left, while my scroll wheel controlled the right. Then I would have to press F again to choose that layout. Also, pressing 1, 2, 3, 4 did not work for my shortcuts, so I had to open the wheel a lot, and it was very annoying. There's guns in this game, because Revolutionary War, but it works very differently in this game than the previous ones. Thank God. Just have fun spinning in circles to avoid getting shot when reloading your gun. The combat feels the same, just tweaked, which will be repeated a lot in this retrospective until we get to Origins. Connor's combat feels unique enough, like no other assassin can do what he does, and that felt awesome. Other than weird controls at times, it felt amazing. This game also introduced naval missions. There are times where you captain a ship and fire upon others in a very pirate-esque way. Almost makes you think they're, testing the waters. It's a water joke! You have 3 different speeds, cannons on both sides, and tiny cannons that I forgot the names of. When ships fire upon you, you can brace yourself to lower the damage taken on your ship. I guess you can say that these missions are fucking awesome, and I'm very excited for Black Flag. I'm more interested to see how much they change and how much they keep. The missions were fairly easy, except for the last one, but again, they were all super fun. Speaking of missions, the structure is very much the same, but with a lot more focus on stealth, which makes sense, hence the name Assassin's Creed. Could you imagine making an Assassin's Creed game without assassins? Pfft, outrageous. There are many missions where the whole purpose is not getting detected, which is outrageous! What do you mean I can't go in guns blazing? I would say there's a good balance between stealth and loud missions. Also, the eavesdropping missions got a major overhaul. Much like the last game where you can't get noticed, now you have to stay in the small circular range, which led to some fun and difficult moments. There was another cool mission where you had to command a battalion to fire at troops, and you had to ride between 3 of them, which made it feel like an actual battle in a war. The missions in the game were actually really fun and unique, and had a nice balance between them all. Like I said, the story is a very slow burn, but it picks up hella fucking fast. At like the halfway point. Yeah, it takes 5 sequences to finally become an assassin out of fucking 12. It was very weird to play like 3 full sequences just to find out you're not actually playing the assassin. Then having to play 2 more to finally become one. With that being said, I love the story in this game. You start out as Haytham Kenway, who is in England to kill someone. Shocker. Who has the key that Desmond and the gang are looking for. That's the connection between the 2 storylines. That's our main focus. We take it to America to get it translated by the locals and recruit the likes of Charles Lee and others. You rescue a native woman who brings you to a cave with a door that needs the Apple of Eden to open, but Haytham doesn't know that. So they fuck. After that, you invite Charles Lee to join the assassins.
You are a Templar.
What? No way. It's the XX. I think my favorite song right here is Say Something Lovin'. So yeah, the first 3 hours you're a Templar, and I thought that was a very cool twist. I wonder if they make a game out of that. It was also kind of cool to see Haytham recruit all the future targets for Connor. Because as Haytham, you see the friendly side, and as Connor, you see their malicious side. Damn dude, chill. You transfer consciousness to a child playing hide and seek. I don't know, man, I just read this. Where Charles Lee threatens you. Then your village burns down and mommy dies. He grows up and boring stuff happens, but find a hologram of the Apple of Eden where Juno says, "Leave and become an assassin." Connor, who can now speak English all of a sudden, says, "Why?" Which Juno replies, "Because it will help your people. Also, this is an Assassin's Creed game and we're taking way too long." He goes and finds Achilles, who is retired from being an assassin. Connor asks Achilles to train him, and he says no. But then Connor kicks him ass, and he says, okay. He reveals your targets to be Haytham and the recruits you got the first 3 sequences to know. Connor also meets some historical Americans, and they're all like, yeah, fuck the British, we must be free. And then Connor says, including slaves? I don't know about that. I don't really know. I don't know about that. Connor does eventually agree to help the likes of Samuel Adams and America with the revolution because they both share a common enemy. So you go through your hit list while simultaneously witnessing historical moments in the American Revolution, which is badass. I remember seeing the beginning of the Boston Massacre and actually knowing what was going to happen next, which was the first time for me in the series, and I loved it. You take part in the Boston Tea Party, you ride with Paul Revere. The Templars also want George Washington dead because he loses all of his battles, which is historically true, which is very funny why they want to kill him over it. Connor eventually runs into his father as the two are trying to kill the same target, and this is the best part of the game. Watching Connor and Haytham bicker was so fucking funny, but also very interesting to see their polar opposite views on the Assassin and Templars. It's not so black and white like we saw in the previous games. They both think they're right, and they're giving valid arguments. It kind of makes you think, who's correct? It's still the assassins, but it makes you think regardless. Haytham eventually reveals George Washington wants to raid the natives, so Connor leaves. But they are also being lied to by Charles Lee, who is a major bitch in this game. Connor stops his people from killing themselves and goes after Charles with the help of... When Connor arrives, Charles is gone with Haytham there instead, after he warned him of Connor's arrival, which ends up with Haytham dying by the hands of his son. Turns out, he doesn't have the key and it was given to Charles as the new leader of their group, so Connor catches and kills him. Connor returns to his empty village where Juno says, "You did technically save your people at a certain point of view. Now hide the key." So Connor buries it in Achilles' son's grave. Jesus Christ, dude. And that was the story of Assassin's Creed 3. There is a short epilogue where you see the British leaving and a hunter at your old reserve being like, "Oh, America's gonna do this a lot. Trail of Tears, mark my words." Oh, okay. They're also gonna bring back taxes. But I am shocked at how much I love the story. For one, I actually had some knowledge of the history, which made some moments recognizable. I also loved the dynamic between Connor and Haytham and their clashing ideals. Both are technically right, but wrong in many ways as well. Both wanting peace, the means that they would go to get peace, is what makes them different. Spending time recruiting men that you eventually have to kill was a unique aspect I loved too. Yeah, it started slow, came to a complete stop, but then sped up and never slowed down since. It also doesn't shine America in a perfect light like so many people like to do. It shows their hypocrisy on freedom and has you not trusting them at certain points. The plot definitely compels you to think for once and be like, I mean, I get what you mean, but like, no. You see the Templars' radical point of view, you see the assassin's radical point of view, both wanting the same thing, but yet wanting something so different all the same. The setting is a very interesting topic. It's pretty good, but it's not the best in the series. It's basically split between two parts, the woods and colonial America. I love the look and feel of this early America, but it is a far cry from what we gotten used to in the past. There's no towering structures that peer over the rest of Italy or Jerusalem or Constantinople. It does fit the game very well though. It was still really fun to parkour and run across the rooftops, which should always feel good. I will say the range of some of the viewpoints seem a bit small. I didn't do all of them, but I did do some just because it did feel a bit small. Let's talk about fast travel. What the fuck are the tunnels? Whose bright idea was it to add the tunnels for the fast travel when there's literally a regular fast travel mechanic in the game? I only used the tunnel when the game's forced you, which thankfully was only like once or twice. But yeah, the setting was smaller in scale than the other games, but still a pretty good fit for Assassin's Creed, and especially for what it was going for. It was also split into 4 sections rather than one giant map, but each map felt big in their own right, that being Boston, New York, the Frontier, and Davenport Homestead, which acted as an HQ of sorts where you can play dress up. There's also homestead missions where you can grow your homestead and get like more resources, but I didn't do any of that. I think one of them includes Bigfoot if I'm not wrong, but again, I didn't play those. You also visit Philadelphia at one point, but it's brief. I really enjoyed the look and feel of colonial America, and it really did feel unique for this entry. The modern day storyline got the biggest upgrade of them all. He actually does stuff. Yeah, he actually uses what he learned from the previous games and goes on actual missions, and it was actually really fun. It is, however, the conclusion of Desmond's story. Essentially, it begins right where Revelations ended, with the gang, and now Desmond's dad, going to the door in the cave Hatham was before. They use the apple to open the door and enter an area that needs the key and 3 power sources. The first mission has Desmond see some parachuting onto an Sturgo building to find the power source chilling on a desk. You are then held at gunpoint by Daniel Cross, who I also don't know who the fuck that is. You escape though, super easy, barely an inconvenience. Second mission requires you to go to a UCF type arena in a mission that harkens back to Hatham's first mission. Cross has the second power source, but you knock him out. The third and final power source your father goes to get so you can go back into the Animus, but your father forgets he is not the main character and gets captured by your old friend Vidic from the first game that you always forget exists until he randomly pops in. You return to the research facility you were kept in the first game, but this time to kill. You kill Cross and find Vidic. He, of course, demands the apple, and a total Michael Bay Transformers move, you hand it to him. Just kidding, you use the apple to control the guards to kill Vidic and themselves. You rescue your dad and become Jesus, and head back to the cave. Juno's also just chilling around the place, and if you actively go after her, she'll give you backstory about the solar flare coming to Earth, and how they tried many times in the past to prevent it, but then just kind of gave up. After you get the key and the 3 power sources, Juno presents a world thing in front of you and tells you to put your hand on it to save the world. When all of a sudden, BAM! Minerva comes in and tells you you're gonna die, but also the solar flare won't kill all life, but most life, and you'll become like a new Jesus or something. Desmond says, ew, and decides to sacrifice himself to stop the flare. Everyone dips as Desmond dies in a non-painful way. Juno then looks over your dead body and says some evil shit, so there's somewhat of a cliffhanger to see what she's about to do now that she's free. I never understood the hate Desmond and the modern day storyline got. It was very interesting. It's just Ubisoft never did anything with it, which is probably why no one cared. I loved it, and this game especially. They actually gave a shit. Probably because it was the final one, so they actually had to wrap it up. They also finally explained why we killed Lucy. But yeah, apparently she was always bad. She was just gonna kill us and give the apple back to Vidic, which is kind of sad. I really liked Lucy, but she's just a bitch, I guess. I'm really gonna miss Desmond though. I was really intrigued with it all, and now I'm left wondering what's next for the modern day stuff. How are they gonna continue without Desmond? Their narrative drive through all these games. I really like the connection between the modern day storyline and the Animus storyline. It always felt connected, and there's a reason why we're traveling back to these times. We're looking for something to aid us in the modern day. Without Desmond as this narrative lead, how are we supposed to tie in the modern day stuff with the Animus? I guess we'll have to see with the next game. Our main protagonist in this game around is finally different, and it was weird at first after being used to Ezio all this time. We are now playing as Connor Kenway, a Native American turned assassin played by Noah Watts. I mean, he's still Native American. It's not like he's not anymore. He's a Native American assassin is the wording I probably could have used. Instead of being Italian, you're being discriminated. I don't know why people were so harsh on Connor, because I actually found myself liking him a lot. Not as much as Ezio, but more than I thought. Maybe a bit more than Altair, but I'll be nice and say it's a tie. His choices in the game never felt out of left field. He just feels like someone who was told the assassins are always correct, and then rolls with that ideology. He wasn't born an assassin. He was just told that this way would bring safety to his people, but in the end, always put them first. He notices multiple times in the story that he's being manipulated or lied to and acts accordingly. There's literally a period in this game where you're no one's ally. You go off on your own. He may not be the deepest character, but there's enough to sympathize with him and understand why he's doing what he's doing. I like Connor, and I wouldn't mind seeing him again one day, but the rules to get an Assassin's Creed sequel is pretty strict. But Connor was far from a bad protagonist and will not go forgotten as we continue through this franchise's ongoing history. Alright, so quick thoughts on Haytham. He's my favorite character in the game. When I was a kid, I thought he was gonna be the assassin, but I guess how correct I was. We played as him briefly and it was really fun, and he truly sold the fact that he was gonna be the main character. Too well. I heard a theory that Haytham Kenway is actually an ex-assassin turned Templar, which is why his mechanics play very similar to what an assassin would play as. Blending, hidden blade, a fucking leap of faith, and also the fact that there are assassin symbols while playing as him. It could be the fact Ubisoft didn't want to change up the gameplay majorly 3 sequences in, but it was fun to think about regardless. I'm saying all of this as if you'd never seen the trailer, which I didn't really. I saw the reveal trailer and it's just a guy in a hood, so I mean, that guy could be anyone. It could be Haytham, I don't know. Haytham also brings a newfound depth in the series that hasn't really been touched upon before, and that's the POV of each side. Every game before this paints the Templars as the obvious bad guys, but this game shows the Templars are just the same as the assassins, with just a different execution. They both want peace, but the ways they want it is different. Seeing a father and son banter about something they both see themselves correct in was really cool and interesting to listen to and form your own opinion on. I don't know. I really loved Haytham, and it would be really cool to see him as a possible ex-assassin. Overall, Assassin's Creed 3 is still among my favorite in the franchise. I dare even say it's still my all-time favorite. Replaying this game unlocked so many memories for me, and especially with my soft spot for the time period and setting, takes the top spot that Revelations briefly held for like a week. I like the removal of the black and white nature on the Templars versus Assassins. I like the father and son on 2 different sides dynamic. I love the setting. I love the story, despite it being a slow start. I can see how some people may not like this game, and that's okay. But based on some titles we got later on, this should not be as hated on as it was. This game is phenomenal in my opinion, and although it's not the best, it's my favorite. They did change up some stuff I wasn't a fan of, and I still think the Ezio trilogy overall is better in quality. I will not take Assassin's Creed 3 for granted, and neither should you. I'm gonna give this game an 8 out of 10, as it would have been better if not for the unnecessary changes. Other than that, Assassin's Creed 3 is finally in the books. So, I was originally going to have all of the games in one video, but there's just too much to get through. So I have broken this down to 3 phases: the Desmond Trilogy, the Player Trilogy, and the Layla Trilogy. My hypothesis is that the games are going to start losing its focus after the finale of the Desmond Trilogy, because he's dead. It'll start to spiral during the Player Trilogy, and they're going to try to get back on track with the Layla Trilogy, but I don't know how that's gonna work. I don't know. We'll see where the series goes, as I am both excited but equally worried for the future of the franchise. The fact that these 5 games felt more like Assassin's Creed more than Valhalla did in about the same amount of time worries me. The series has always been about the story before setting, but now it feels more like it's the setting before the story. I don't know how the modern day storylines will compare to Desmond's, but I really hope they don't lose focus. I feel like people started to retroactively miss Desmond after sensing his absence, but I never hated him. I loved his sections, and I constantly wanted more. They only gave us more towards the end, which kinda sucked, because they were really fun. I cannot wait to dive into the next era of the franchise, and I hope you guys are too. Hey guys, so I hope you like this video and respect my opinions, as nothing in this video is fact. If you get angry over this video, seek counseling, because opinions are everywhere and you gotta deal with it. I will continue streaming my Assassin's Creed journey, starting with Assassin's Creed 4 a week after this video is published. The date will probably be at the top of the description below. Thank you all so much for watching and wasting your time with this video, and don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and possibly comment. Share this video with other Assassin's Creed fans to rally their support or rile them up with different opinions than theirs. If you're new to this channel, I don't typically do this. In fact, this is the first kind of video essay content on this channel. I typically just play games and try to have fun, and then I stream on occasion. Well, that's it for today, guys. I will see you all next week with a new video in the first stream of Assassin's Creed 4. Goodbye. Alright, I just took some melatonin to see how well this goes. Well, seeing how split the fan base is on these changes may seem to imply that the changes were not very best for the best. What the fuck does that mean? Alright, we did combat. Yay, applause! Where's the applause button? Nope, that's Miller. Oh my god. You can definitely tell they took better missions, better combat, better story. It's either his character being but yeah, Ezio plays Ezio. What? Which do I sound stuffed? Well, not like stuffed with cum after being fucked, but like stuffed sinus wise. I was I'm just trying to do this campaign. I'm fine, don't worry about me. Jesus Christ.